It's about to go.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Pioneers of Change and Progress, Black Women in HIV Philanthropy. My name is Dominique Morgan. I am a philanthropic advisor and donor doula at Starks and Whitaker Consulting, and I am super excited to be moderating this conversation with these transformative powerhouses in the game of HIV philanthropy and in the game of collaboration and change-making work when we think about Black women who are moving the needle to give us access to the care, support, and most importantly, the resources that allow us to do the work that creates the important change in our communities. Want to thank AIDS Watch for convening us today and celebrating the importance of Black women in this work and giving us the opportunity to engage with you all, dig into some of the questions you all have sent us that were so incredible and exciting, and most importantly, give you a visual demonstration of how collaboration is essential for community change. I wanted to start off by introducing our panelists, and then they're going to tell you a little bit about the specific work that they do in this ecosystem to shift change as Black women who are change makers. And I want to start off with Dr. Athena Cross. She has been doing the important work in partnership with Gilead at the Melanated movement and is going to tell you more about how that project has been critical to work that you've experienced, but also what you can see coming soon from this powerful work she's been building. Dr. Cross.
Hi, everyone. And Dominique, thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you for being our host today. The Melanated movement grew out of our observation of gaps. We started this work about 2 years ago when we were looking at what was the epidemiological burden of HIV among Black people, and then where was philanthropy actually going? And what we found a couple of years ago, there was a massive epidemiological burden that Black women were experiencing. But then when we looked at where the philanthropic dollars are going, and there's a great tool by the Funders Concerned About AIDS that shows you where philanthropy is distributed broadly. So if anyone needs to think about where money is actually being spent, that's a great resource to actually look for where the resources are going. And what we found that there wasn't a lot of investment in Black women in HIV, and we felt like there was a massive gap in the work that we were doing, but a massive disservice that was happening for Black women. And so we took that as an opportunity to say, okay, what are the things that we can do as an organization, as an intermediary funder, in order to ensure that our work was meeting the needs of the communities that we support? And we decided to start with a program called Melanated Movement Engagement, which is really based around how we shift the conversation about HIV and bodily autonomy and reproductive health in Black women. And when we talk about Black women as an organization, we are referring to Black women of all experiences, both cis and transgender women. We just say women, Black women. And so our work focuses on the experiences of Black women on the engagement portion. We really work to engage with young women across HBCU campuses. We partnered with My Sister's Keeper to do a number of engagements across HBCUs across the country to really get young people talking about HIV, because I think there's also a disconnect with young people and HIV, which is another gap that we can have on another conversation on another day. But as we were trying to really focus on this messaging, one of the parts that we wanted to make sure we captured was how we're engaging young women with the conversation about their own bodies and their own sexuality and their own pleasure. We also had an entire campaign that was led by all different types of women who are in this movement, who did lives and conversations, and that work was really, really fulfilling. But we know that being able to have messaging wasn't enough. And so the second part of our work, thanks to support of Gilead, was the Melanated Movement Fund. the Melanated Movement Fund was to actually get the dollars to organizations led by Black women. And we shifted the narrative in the way that we approached that work by offering multi-year funding opportunities. A lot of time, the funding that we have in this community and in many philanthropic organizations is year to year. And we know that sustainable change takes a long-term commitment and investment. So what we decided to do was have multi-year funding for the organizations, and I'm very happy to say through that program we've been able to offer multi-year funding to 5 organizations across the country, AOC in Fort Worth, Texas, the Dandelion Movement out of Atlanta, Georgia, Multicultural AIDS Coalition in Boston, the Outlaw Project in Tucson, and the Women's Collective in Washington, D.C. And those are all organizations doing really amazing work that we cannot wait to see. But what's really important about the way that we designed this program was not to only sort of shift the narrative around multi-year funding, but shift the way that women are working together. And we had another big project that we had amazing learnings from, and we've been integrating those learnings into the Melanated Movement program. And so it's really about how we engage with women, how women engage with each other, how we are changing the conversation between cis and transgender women so that we can all be in a place of understanding that our sisterhood is important, especially as we look at overarching sort of challenges that Black women as a collective face. And that was really what guided the work, and we're really happy that we've been able to do some of this work, and we continue to do it. The work of the Melanated Movement Engagement Program, as well as the Melanated Movement Fund, continue to move forward. And I think this is just the beginning, and how we really try to mobilize resources to Black women-led organizations across this country.
Thank you so much for that introduction to the powerful work you all have done, Dr. Cross. I want to just uplift intermediaries we know are important components in this philanthropic work. Not everyone has the capacity to be in the trenches very deeply. And so we have to be in collaboration, because that's how you have funds that are reaching across the country and touching small projects so they can become large moving projects. For me, when I think about a catalyst leader, right, we're thinking about someone who focuses on growth more than just pure winning. And in my time in philanthropy, I've had the extreme privilege of working with Anique Hameed and Miss Deb. You know, I'm from Nebraska, so I'm always gonna put a miss in front of it. I feel like my mom gonna hit me on the back of the head if I don't. And seeing the powerful work of the team at Gilead and the work of setting the pace and their focus on thinking about the health and wellness of all Black women and girls in our communities. So I want to introduce Anique Hameed from Gilead and Miss Deb, and they're gonna tell us a little bit about how their collaboration has allowed for transformative work to happen all across the United States.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dominique, for that introduction. It's just a pleasure to be in this space today. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Anique Hameed, and I'm a senior manager for corporate giving at Gilead Sciences in our public affairs team. And I'm also the program officer for our Setting the Pace initiative. And Setting the Pace is a 3-year, $12.6 million commitment to improving the HIV landscape for Black women and girls across the United States. And so we came into this work with an understanding from community leaders that there was a trend where we're seeing significant gap in support for Black women-led organizations, and specifically culturally, socially, relevant programming for Black women and girls as it relates to HIV. Here at Gilead, we say we go where the need is greatest, and we focus on Gilead giving for good. And we start, any of our programmatic developments with looking at the science, right? Gilead is a biopharmaceutical company based in San Francisco, California. And so we're rooted in the science and the data. And the data tells us that Black women make up 50%. And, one that's significant. There's a significant disparity, and there's opportunity for us to do something there to support community. So first we start with the data, then like any good organization that understands community, together a group of dynamic Black women HIV experts to tell us about what they were seeing on the ground in their work. What are the trends and the best ways that Gilead could make an impact? In 2023, we developed a setting that arts and advocacy, community, and education. And this is an initiative that focuses on HIV prevention. So that's culturally responsive programming, to support counseling, testing, links to care efforts. Understand that for generations, important messages is to reach community in culturally relevant ways, and to also use it for advocacy to get the attention of policy makers and thought leaders and change makers. So we fund organizations in that space. Community. So we understand, and I think we'll talk a bit more here about how none of this can be done singularly or as individual organizations or entities, but in community is where we'll be able to build and share best practices. So there's a component about this grant for community building, and then also education. Ensuring that people understand what their risk is around HIV, collecting data and we are really proud to have funded 19 organizations across the United States to be implementing this work, which AIDS United is one of those organizations that is in our grantee cohort for movement, and really excited today to have this conversation about how philanthropy can empower communities and empower organizations to us.
Collaboration is key, right? And I have been consistently saying to folks, relationships are disruptors. So many of the issues we're facing, we feel like we have to address these issues alone. It's those late night moments as leaders and change makers when you're in your phone typing out your thoughts furiously, and you get caught up in this idea that it is a singular race. But the beauty of this panel and the work that we are hearing described to us, you all, is that there's no moment where it was one person who allowed it to take place. And what I think is really important about philanthropy and philanthropy's deep, authentic relationships with the folks that we are investing in is that that's when the relationship in fact grows, because from the seed of that philanthropic investment, we see how it flows into our communities across the country. So we're going to get into some questions so we can hear some more from these incredible thought leaders and change makers in the work. And we're going to start off with Anique. What challenges do Black women leaders face in driving strategic philanthropy in HIV?
Yes, thank you for the question, Dominique. So I think there can be, several challenges, but I think one particularly is translating your lived experience into, a business case or into, strategic points to bring others in on why, these investments are critically important. Folks that have lived experience, we may know from what we've seen or what we have navigated in our own lives why resourcing Black women-led organizations or initiatives is incredibly important. But social impact and philanthropy is often what we like to say a double bottom line. What's good for community and what's good for business. So it's being able to, as a person with lived experience, with a lot of passion around issues and their importance, communicate the business case and bring others along on this journey of why we need to continue making investments for Black women-led organizations and projects. So it's one, sometimes putting your passion in the pocket and putting on the business hat, putting your passion in the pocket, putting on the political hat, and bringing voices from different sections of your business to the table to be able to make these decisions around investments. So sometimes tucking that passion away and being able to line the dots up for business on why this makes sense, and being an advocate also within philanthropic spaces while having that foot in community.
I want to pull out, because y'all know Anique is a strategic talker and she's super skillful. I want to pull out a piece of what she's saying for us to acknowledge when we are centering the experiences of Black women in philanthropy and the sacrifice, the putting your passion in the pocket, in order to move things forward, in order to bring people into your vision, thinking about the greater good. I'm seeing in the chat all of these advocates from across the country. I want you all to think about what you have to sacrifice to get people to see your vision sometimes, and what that can feel like. And yes, these folks are working with high numbers of capital, but I think today is important to acknowledge that these are human beings. These are Black women who the everyday experience of Black women is about sacrifice, and it's taken a deeper level in order to move funds to our work and to our vision. And with that in mind, and the melanated movement in my mindset, Dr. Cross, I would love for us to talk about the trends in charitable giving, the trends that you are seeing in communications, and creating HIV champions that you've observed in your work and across program initiatives that you are leading.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, I mean, I think there's no other way to say it, but, you know, to just say the truth, right? We've been seeing that HIV funding has seen dramatic decrease in funding over the last several years. And I would imagine that these trends will continue, especially as we get to this new moment in time where broader philanthropy is still trying to figure out its priorities and the ways that it can be effectively utilized to help secure our public health infrastructure. That being said, you know, what I have seen is funders really coming with ways to have more accessible funding opportunities. So organizations like Gilead have the ability to give funding directly to community-based organizations, and that's incredibly important because we need to move as much money as possible to folks to be able to do God's work every day. I think the other thing that we've seen and what we've done as an organization is really look at ways to have more flexible application processes to make it easier to have funding, to apply for funding as a intermediary, but as an intermediary that practices participatory grant making. All of the decisions that are made on our funding is actually made by a community advisory board. So every program has a advisory board that is built of the community that particular funding stream supports, and those people from community are making the final decisions on who we fund and how we fund them. And so I think being able to elevate community voices so that they are able to say, people in community are able to say, this is what we need, this is what makes sense for us, is really, really important. And I think we have to always keep the community as the primary focus and the North Star of all of this work. With regard to communication, I think I'll be a little bit critical of some of the things that I'll see because it's, you know, reality. I think one of the challenges that we face collectively is that people within the movement often spend a lot of time talking to each other in communication channels and not enough time getting conversation to actual people across. And so I do think that there's lots of space for us to make greater strides, which is why we started the Melanated movement engagement in the first place. How we make better, more concerted efforts to actually speak to real people about what's happening in this life at a time where communication and language and the words that we're hearing and the messaging that we're getting is so precarious, and we face disinformation and misinformation. How do we get like the real truth to people in a way that is meaningful? And I think that's a sort of a collective challenge that we all need to sort of think about and find ways to address. And then our work often has leadership development programs. We think it's really important that we provide tools, not only funding, but capacity building resources and technical assistant resources too, because it's not always the money. Sometimes it's the intangible things that are just as important in order to help develop leaders. And so we try to do that across all of our programs. But I do think that there's been more efforts to develop leaders from community, the next generation of leaders. That's another thing that has to happen now. So I'm sort of heartened in the way that community has shown up and is really sort of, getting resources to people who actually need them. But there's always room for improvement. And I think collectively we can make some of those improvements. And we try to do it every day in our work. But I do think it's important that we keep people and community first. And I think as long as we do that, we will always be making the right choices and the right decisions.
Absolutely. That feedback loop with community is so essential. I always tell folks that that's the temperature check. Anique, Miss Deborah has been able to join us. I am not going to put you on the spot and give you a direct question. However, I'm going to consolidate these two questions that were supposed to be for the both of you all, that I think will allow you all to share some insight for how we get to free, but also acknowledge some of the seeds you all have planted in our communities that will really demonstrate that the work is happening. Because we are at a time where fear is meant to keep us unfocused from the progress that has taken place and the progress that is taking place. Things are scary, things are difficult, right? I always compare it to, if you're watching a Freddy Krueger movie and you don't run, if you sit still, honey, Freddy's going to get you. You gotta know Freddy is there, but you have to keep moving forward. Amen. All right. So in that spirit, what pathways and pioneering efforts have been most impactful in supporting grassroots movements led by women? So that's a piece of it. And then if you have something at the top of mind, can you share some of your favorite community-led initiatives and what you think their impact is? And that's for everybody. Y'all can jump in.
Yeah, Deborah, did you want to take a first go as talking about pioneering
Yeah,
community projects related to Black women? Because I know you have a wealth of knowledge.
yeah. I mean, I think one of the two things. I'm sorry for being late. I've just had a lot of technical problems here, but I'm here now. I'm in Atlanta right now, and we just held a meeting with a cross-functional group of Black women, and there are about 20 women here. And Gilead convened this meeting that cross-functionally of clinicians, people, women who are working in domestic violence, women who work in maternal child health, and women who work in other harm reduction clinics and things like that. And what happened today in Atlanta, these women said this is the first time this has ever happened for them. And so those are the kinds of initiatives that we're trying to bring together, a cross function of people who are working towards health of Black women, not just HIV, but Black women, period, and having everyone in the same room to share information. And it was really heartwarming because we all know there are a lot of Black people in Atlanta. That's kind of the mecca for Black folks right now. And for the women to say this is the first time they had ever come together. And some of these women have been doing HIV work for the last 30 years. And so those are the kind of initiatives that we're trying to do more of, is convening people in places and spaces where we can share. We don't have to rebuild everything from the ground up, but if we're in the rooms together, we can start to share our experiences and pull through some of the work that each of us are doing. So that's one initiative that we're working on. Another one I'm proud of is a joint thing that we've been working on with a group of women out of Florida, which is called Risky Dinner Conversations, and taking risky and turning it on its head and bringing Black women together again in a safe space to have conversations. And it's led by women, organized by women. And we hope to do more of those kinds of things where sisters can come together, be together, and share. We don't have to remake the wheel every time we get ready to do something. So I'll kick it back over to you, Anique, because I know you have a lot of projects that you have your hands in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there have been one, Setting the Pace is just one, initiative that we're doing here at Gilead. Also, we really, take community engagement and community partnership personally. None of this work can be done in silos, and especially in this climate, we have to interlock arms and walk this thing out together, no matter what sector you're in, no matter if you're in philanthropy, if you're in the reporting, this community in particular, we have showing up at conferences, showing up at places like Sarah Jake's Women Evolve, where we got to engage, a new section of, women to help them understand their risk around, HIV, and that it's a, this is also a Black sister thing, right? And thinking through other ways we can create spaces and opportunities for us to convene and have these conversations. Also thinking through engaging, our historically Black colleges and universities, and, not just the folks that are there, but many of us know the communities around our HBCUs are very much Black communities with Black businesses and, generational family, legacy investments in those academic hubs. So, using those as opportunities to, bring folks in and have these conversations, and saying that, our future solutions are going to be for us, by us. It's going to be FUBU, right? So creating those opportunities across the country, but also as we think about, pioneers and people who have been doing this work, definitely would lift up another, Setting the Pace grantee, Sister Love, who has been doing this work for, decades, and doing it so well. And not only, HIV education, prevention, treatment, linkage to care, but the act of bringing together Black women for us to be able to have conversation and decide what is the, what are best pathways forward, what are best practices. So what I'll say about this season is that we cannot do it alone. It has to be done in community, in partnership. And Gilead is part of community. Corporations, funders are also part of community, and we want to continue to be at the table. We want to continue to convene spaces for us to engage and talk. And then also, I just want to, in this moment, lean in on something that Athena, Dr. Cross, said as well about, we know that funding has been trending downward for, HIV, services, but also it's part of precarious situation for just funding for Black women-led organizations as well. So I think we have to get really creative in our partnerships, in collaborating for programmatically and doing things together, but also look at the other resources that are available. And for us at Gilead, and specifically as part of the Setting the Pace initiative, we have capacity building is a critical part of that project. So yes, we're excited to see the HIV prevention efforts and education, but one of my metrics I'm looking for is, are these majority Black women-led organizations going to be sustainable? What tools and technical assistance can we provide them to ensure that they're building their capacity and their acumen around fundraising, donor development? And one of the metrics I've been excited to see is that folks have been securing more funds, in building new partnerships since they've been a part of the Setting the Pace initiative. So we want to, provide those sometimes non dollar related resources as well. Also, leadership development. It's a part of the work that we do with Setting the Pace, but with also some of our other granted programs to make sure, organizations that are led by traditionally marginalized folks, as we know Black women are, that those leaders have all they feel like they need to go out and continue pushing, holding the line and pushing forward to get more access to, to rooms, conversations, and resources. So in community, dollars flow. We might need to share some more dollars amongst each other, but also we need to tap into those other resources that funders may make available to ensure that we can all sustain through these times.
Thank you both for those incredible insights. And we're just kind of scratching the surface of the work that's happening all over the place. But absolutely shout out to Sister Love and the organizations who have been doing the work, because it's so important as we go forward to not forget where we came from. We're going to get to, in this last bit of time we have together, y'all, with questions that have come directly from folks who have registered from the session today. So making sure that their thoughts and wonders are being put up in the forefront. I want to start with, as Black women in this space, how do you, one, encourage yourselves to continue in the work and take care of your mental health? And two, how do you encourage those you are in this work with to take care of their mental health and find joy in the times that we are in?
I'll take that one. I think one of the things is to lean in when you see someone is stressed out, not making any sense, going off on a tangent and kind of losing sight of the work, is to pull their coat, right? And say, let's go for a walk, or why don't you and I go get a massage or a facial or something together? And then I think trying to be as honest with each other as possible, but also for myself, one of the things that I'm trying to do is take more naps and make sure that I get enough rest, because you can't fight if you're not rested. And so making sure I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep at night, but also be still and be okay with being still, and talking to the other women in my life about how to enjoy downtime with one another. I think that's the kind of love that we need to think about, and the kind of spaces we need to make sure we create for ourselves. And it's nothing wrong with that. I think that old adage of strong Black woman is the thing that's killing a lot of Black women, and we can't persevere if we're not rested and if we are not using our strength collectively. And by that, I mean resting together as well as working together. So I think that's important. And it's just looking in each other's eyes. I have a colleague who was going out of work for a little while. And she's like, I'll be back in 2 weeks. And I was like, why are you coming back in 2 weeks when you could take 6 weeks off? Take the 6 weeks off. And about 3 or 4 weeks into it, she called me and said, thank you, because you looked at me crazy when I said that. And the way you looked at me made me think I do need to take that time off. And she was able to take care of herself during that time. So those kinds of things, I think, is what we need to do more of.
Yeah, I'd like to offer, I think Deb's absolutely right. And as someone who has researched extensively Black women and this superwoman theory, it really does kill us. Like, it literally kills us. It's a proven fact. So that being said, I have been trying to do a couple of things. First is just stepping away and trying to minimize the amount of time I spend in social media, because there is a lot of noise, especially now. And if we can filter through some of that, I think it makes a massive difference to it. We have a finite amount of things that we can do right now, but what we can do is focus on the things that are meaningful for our communities, and try and sort of put blinders on the rest of the noise, because it really is just noise that's here to drive us crazy. I try to walk away. I build stuff, so I sit in my house and build stuff. I try and encourage my team to walk away. I think it's really important to get outside and just walk in nature, because like this is a lot. And sometimes just being in some trees makes everything, and on the beach or wherever it is you can walk, even in the streets, just being outside and getting some fresh air is really important. I try and encourage everyone on the team to do that. And then the other thing is I try to just have, compassion and humanity and grace, not just for the people who work with me, but for myself too. Because we have to be kind to ourselves in order to be kind for other people and to continue to be present.
Yes. And I'll also add, like, yes, weathering, is a real thing. We'll look at Black women, hair laid, edges right, and we say, we're not cracking, but a lot of us are cracking internally, right? We're aging faster biologically. Our cells are tired. We're tired at a cellular level. And Black women have been on the front lines of this work and a lot of work and movements, both mentally and physically, for a long time. So I love, I think the author's name is Trisha Hersey, and she has a book, Rest is Resistance. They call it a Nat Bishop. And, just thinking about the concept of rest. And I think looking at it from a lens of our elders, or an ancestral lens, where they may have not always had the time to take a full nap, but they, Mama is in that corner with her eyes closed. She's like, I'm not sleeping, I'm resting, got that nice quilt over her. She's resting. So any opportunity you can take to just pause, sit, be still, take a moment to yourself, it is so deserved. And in many instances, our ancestors that went through Jim Crow, went through, segregation, the civil rights movement, they had a lot that they were fighting, but they still took a moment to rest, or to call family over, put something on the barbecue grill, and to create intentional joy, in spite of what's going on around. So rest is a lot. There are many advocates on the line, fighters, natural born fighters on the line, but rest is also a tool for fighting as well. So go to the beach, take that walk, like Dr. Cross said, and feel the sun on your skin, especially as sun people here. And just carve out that time. And if you can, like Deb said, bring a sister. We can't think of it for ourselves, to do that for ourselves. And if you see a sister struggling, bring her along with you for that walk.
Thank you all so much for sharing these insights as we're like going through the thing, right? And figuring out. One thing that I have been telling folks is to make sure you don't forget. And when I mean that, when I say that is, when you're going through something new that's scary, you will forget that you've been through scary things before and gotten to the other side. So in addition to rest, get that pen and paper or whatever works best for you and write down scary things that you have navigated before. And it will be a consistent reminder. Put it on your mirror. I have a whiteboard that's blurred out back there that has a list of things. But it's important to know that your body and the reflexes that you possess have navigated scary, difficult things before, and yet you are still here, and yet we will still be here in the future. So thank you to Dr. Athena Cross, to Deborah Wafer, and to Anique Hameed. Thank you all for sharing your insights, sharing your perspective. Thank you to AIDS United for bringing us together and talking about Black women in philanthropy. There will be links that are dropped in the chat from the incredible folks from the comms team at AIDS United. If you register through the link, you will receive a follow-up email with some great information and insights and resources for you. You'll see in the scroller that there are various pieces of information that you can check out. And last but not least, just make sure that you take time for yourself today. Advocacy doesn't always have to be global. The best advocacy starts at home. And if that's what you have space for today, I promise you that is very transformational. Thank you all to the panelists. Thank you again to AIDS United. Thank you all for joining us and sharing. And we all will see you again very soon.
Thanks, Dominique.